Hi, we're Quentin Curious Volumes. My name is James, or as I'm going by in the month of Chekhovember, the gentleman with the little dog. We're going to be discussing The Lady with the Little Dog next week, but this week we're talking about Anton Chekhov's classic short story, Ord Number 6. Some would call it a novella or a novelette, perhaps, as it's a bit on the long side for a short story. Um, so this is a story that probably draws a little more than his other works on Chekhov's life experience as a physician. As we know, he got a medical degree and he started writing short stories while he was in medical school as a way to raise money to support his family. This is something that I don't think would really get you very far these days. Um, but he continued to practice medicine for quite some time, but eventually he was making more money as a writer of short stories and plays than from medicine. But Ord Number 6 is, it's something you could imagine the scenario being written by maybe Edgar Allan Poe, but Poe would have certainly taken it in a different direction. It would have treated it very differently, even if it ended up the same way. Um, Ward number 6 of the title is a mental ward connected to a small hospital in a remote part of Russia in the 1890s, presumably. That's when the story was written. And the hospital is in a town, as we're told, that's like 200 miles from the nearest railroad. So it's pretty rural, pretty remote. But the town does have a hospital with, I think there were three doctors working there, and the ward where the mental patients are has, I think, five or six patients, and they're overseen by a soldier named Nikita, who basically just beats them to enforce discipline. We're briefly introduced to each of the inmates, but the one who becomes central is called Gromov, and he is a member of the minor aristocracy, but he's been committed because of his paranoid persecution complex, and he's a very smart man who has done a lot of reading, and this attracts the attention of the head doctor of the hospital, a man called Raglan. And Raglan is someone who isn't really that interested in practicing medicine. He would have liked to be a priest, but he got into medicine, and he's found himself in a rather comfortable position at this hospital. He doesn't really have to do a lot of work. He sort of delegates it to his sort of assistant doctors and to the nurses and orderlies. Um, he spends a few hours in the morning going around and doing kind of rote medicine, and then he goes back to um, his apartment with his servant, both of which are provided as part of his salary for the hospital, and he has a big collection of books, which it says he spends half of his income on accumulating books, and he spends a good deal of the afternoon slowly reading works of philosophy and history, and every half hour taking a sip of vodka and a bite of a pickle that he leaves just sitting on the desk with no plate, we're told. These are some of the little details that stuck in my mind. A great writer will give you little details that just sort of linger with you. That was one for me. So this Dr. Raglan, he goes over to the ward to have a look around. He's sort of horrified by the conditions of these inmates. He doesn't really do much to improve their condition, but which tells you what his philosophy is worth. But and we find out more about that soon. He strikes up a conversation with Gromov, the paranoiac, and they talk about philosophy a great deal. They have these back and forth conversations, largely around stoicism and cynicism. The doctor says, if you have the right attitude, you won't, pain will not bother you. Pain is something that you can decide not to experience, and with the right outlook, uh, being committed to a mental institution or a prison, it can be just the same as being in a comfortable, warm study. Um, and Gromov says, you can say that, or Marcus Aurelius could say that, but they are not. They are not in this condition. And if you were to catch your thumb on a door, you would howl just like anyone. And the doctor says, well, that's it never happened, or something like that. But they have a lot of conversations along these lines. I think most people, even if they are admirers of Stoic philosophy, will see the wisdom and some of the truth in in Gromov's criticisms of Stoicism. Uh, Diogenes may be perfectly fine living in a barrel, but he has chosen to do that. He's not committed. He's not locked up. Eventually, we learn a bit more about the doctor. He has pretty much one friend in town. He doesn't like to talk to anyone. He's a bit of a misanthrope. He finds the only interesting conversation he has is with Gromov, but he does have a friend who visits him almost every day, who is a postmaster, and the postmaster is also an army veteran. And this army veteran eventually convinces the doctor to go on sort of a big trip where they're going to go see the capital cities. They're going to Moscow and St. Petersburg and Warsaw, where the postmaster was stationed in his army days. So they go on this big trip. The doctor does not get a lot of pleasure out of it. He goes, he sees the sights, the museums. By the time they get to Warsaw, he's kind of worn out and he just wants to sit in the room, while the postmaster goes out and visits old friends and runs up some gambling debts, which he goes to the doctor to help him pay off. And it's quite a bit of money. It's like 500 rubles. Um, they return to their hometown. The doctor is sort of moved out of his apartment, and he's been sort of ejected from his job, replaced, forcibly retired, though he has not saved any money. People expected that someone in his position would have some money saved up. He actually gave a lot of his money to, he spent a lot of it on this long trip and gave a lot of it to the postmaster to pay his gambling debts. So he's in a bit of a tight situation and ends up rooming with some working class people in their like front room or something like that. Eventually, he ends up back at ward number 6, this time as an inmate. He is sort of almost tricked into being committed. He ends up in a room with Gromov, and wonders why he can't just leave when he wants to. And Gromov's like, yeah, you can't. And he starts hollering to be let out, and the other inmates are hollering to be let out. And Nikita, the soldier, comes and beats him, and yeah, so it's a pretty rough situation, but that is how the story goes. It's kind of dark. It's a little bit sad, but there's a whole lot of life in it along the way. The stories of the people in the ward, the other doctors, how they came to be where they are, how they relate to each other, the long conversations between Raglan and Gromov. Um, Sometimes long philosophical conversations in literature can be a bit dry and off-putting. This is not dry and off-putting. I highly recommend it. It is a bit dark. A lot of Chekhov has kind of a dark edge, but there's also a lot of humanity and a lot of affection for the characters. So that's a recommendation that you check out. Ward number 6 by Anton Chekhov. I'll see you next week for Gooseberries and the Lady with the Little Dog. Thank you for watching. Bye.